Hi, very good afternoon to everyone. We are live now for our webinar session, and I welcome every one of you to this special expert panel session. Today, on the International Day of Forest 2026, we gather under the inspiring theme Forest and Economies to celebrate and elevate the true value of our forest landscapes. Forests are the vibrant biological backbone of our global economy, a vital natural infrastructure that sustains human well being, secures our water flows, and stabilizes the very resources that drive our agriculture and industry. For billions of people, forests are of a cornerstone of daily life, offering a foundation for sustainable income and community resilience. Our session, Value Forests for a nature positive economy, from ecosystem services to high integrity climate actions, is designed to unlock this potential. We are here to bridge the gap between the ecological brilliance and economic planning, moving toward a future where natural services are recognized as high integrity drivers of climate action. This event is hosted by IORA Ecological Solutions, an organization with over 14 years of experience in transforming forest conservation into measurable economic growth and climate resilience. To guide us through in this roadmap, I'm honored to introduce our distinguished panel. First, Dr. Madhu Verma, ma'am, a senior economic advisor, IORA, a globally recognized pioneer in environmental economics with nearly 40 years of expertise in institutionalizing green accounting and ecosystem valuation. Second, Mr. Rajkumar Srivastava, sir, head of NBS and Strategy IORA, a seasoned forester and a former principal chief conservator of forest, who champions digital transformation and technological innovation for a regenerative economy. Third, Mr. Subhash Chandra, sir, CEO National Campa, a distinguished IFS officer overseeing India's national afforestation and restoration efforts with a deep expertise in forest policy and landscape resilience. And last but not least, Mr. Varghese Paul, sir, CEO IORA, a veteran leader with over 30 years of experience in translating complex climate strategies into high quality nature based solutions and carbon finance initiatives. And to moderate, we welcome Dr. Aakriti Wanchoo, the VP IORA, a specialist in sustainable agriculture and climate policy who leads innovative research and capacity building programs for a resilient future. Let's begin by exploring the forest as the world's premier ecosystem service provider. Thank you. Over to you, Aakriti.
Thank you very much, Chinmay, and welcome to all our panelists. This is a very special webinar for us. Today, we are talking to our in-house leaders, our in-house experts from IORA, people who are there to mentor us and teach us every day. Today, we wanted to share their expertise with everyone. So welcome, Madhu ma'am, Varghese, Subhash sir, and Ake sir. As Chinmay mentioned, the theme this year of the International Day of Forest, which is going to be celebrated tomorrow, is Forest and Economies. And we're all very, very aware of how reliant we are as a society on forest, for multiple ecosystem services, for resources, and for livelihoods as well. There are about 1.6 billion people across the world who depend on forests either directly or indirectly for their livelihoods. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to start with Subhash Chandra sir. And sir, I'd like to ask you that given your very, very long career and your long association with forests, both with the central government and working with state departments, how do you think the resources that are meant for forests can be better directed to ensure that we are able to maintain the long-term health of our forest resources? We are able to ensure that the services that they deliver, both tangible and intangible, are able to go on for the long term.
Thank you, Aakriti ji, for inviting me to join this webinar. The question you have asked about how we can increase the fund flow in the forestry. There are issues because forestry is unlike any other economic or industrial activity where we require funds at certain stage of activity. In forestry, we require regular investment of manpower, investment of financial resources, and it is not something we say some finality is done in a year. So whatever we invest in creating or managing a forest, it requires sustainable financing so that it creates livelihood for the local community. It creates the better resources, forest resources, which are able to provide the optimum ecological services and conserve biodiversity. Apart from that, the hydrological cycle maintenance, which is a very important function, which is an important function of the forest. We have to devote a lot of resources in securing water for the country, and this requires a long-term commitment to the for financing in the forestry sector. I think we will discuss in this webinar that the resources are from the central government. They are provided to the states, and the states ultimately finally give it to the forest department. But forest department receives just a fraction of the financial resources. There are many departments, many agencies which are also working simultaneously in the areas where the forests are there, especially the tribal welfare schemes, the soil conservation, the irrigation department, the PWD, and rural development programs. So we have to see how other sectors are also involved in improving the forest, better managing the forest resources. So I stop here. I think we will, in the next round, we will
Yes, sir.
discuss further on this.
Yes, sir. I'll come back to you with a follow-up question regarding this. But before that, I'd like to go to Madhu ma'am and pick up from something that Subhash sir said about how central government allocates resources to the forest departments. And ma'am, based on your experience with the finance commissions, the last few finance commissions, how do you think that we can ensure that those resources that are meant for the forest, that are given to the state based on their performance to forest, actually go back into the system?
Yes, thank you, Aakriti. Thank you, first of all, for inviting me to this wonderful discussion. It's also a kind of a learning process for me to listening to all my colleagues and friends. Well, I'm an ecological economist and environmental economist, and try to put value on the contribution of natural resources. So to claim compensation, to claim what we contribute, if you look at our GDP data and contribution of forest, you find it's a very small value, not even 1 to 2% of the total GDP of the country. But if you understand importance of forest, they go beyond timber. That's what, when we talk about forest and we talk about nature positive kind of contributions, it is beyond timber, many more contributions in terms of water provisioning, soil conservation, pollination services, and a couple of such things come into being. Gene pool regulation, habitat conservation come into being. So we don't highlight, because they don't ask for any kind of a compensation themselves. They are the silent, it silently provides, it's a very benevolent kind of a system, or an ecosystem provides so much of support to the economic system, but doesn't have any means of charging for it. So we have to work on the behalf and demonstrate what it actually contributes. We have to recognize the contribution first in terms of listing the contributions of ecosystem services, demonstrate by doing economic valuation to understand the monetary value. Whether one likes it or not, if you convey things in terms of cost of degradation, value of conservation, you understand better. Otherwise, if we just keep on telling in terms of stories and this contributes so much, but how much? You have to capture that as well. So when you demonstrate this, you do ecosystem, valuation, you put them into the framework of accounting, because what we account now is simply contribution of timber, some NTFP, some thumb rules were used for getting contribution of water and some other values, but not beyond that. So when we do ecosystem accounting, we actually make entry of all these contributions to the system. And then we take it forward in terms of asking for reward, compensation, price, incentives. So in Finance Commission, that's what, I was doing a study with the ministry on net present value of forest, which is the value of diversion of forest. So that's what hit my mind, that it's very strange when you divert forest, you actually are earning revenue by diverting it. So intention is not earn revenue, but you earn revenue because you are being compensated for that. But states which have got directive through the fiscal forest policy or through the Supreme Court to maintain large area under forest and tree cover because of strategic locations and the importance of those forests, nothing is going back to these states. That made me submit a proposal to 13th Finance Commission and ask for a compensation. So the structure of Finance Commission is such that they get a proportion of central taxes, which they collect from states, around 41 to 42% they give back to the states using a formula. There was no such, weightage given to forest, but our studies of 14, 13, 14th, Finance Commission led to a lot of discussion and were able to convince the Finance Commission to include forest contribution, recognize forest contribution, and it was 7.5% weightage was given in the 14th Finance Commission. But when the money came on account of forest to the states, there was no such mechanism. They can't, exercise beyond this particular, say, boundary. How this money should be used. So when the money came, it's like earning money on the basis of forest, but state has got right because forest is a concurrent list. They can use it for a number of purposes. Not much had gone, as Subhash pointed out. Very minuscule amount had gone. Even it gets adjusted against other allocations. If you're getting from one source, it gets reduced and you get some from here. So what we have done in the 16th Finance Commission, we recommended to the Finance Commission to include the performance-based indicators. And it would automatically, if you would like to maintain forest and tree cover, if you're getting higher value, higher compensation, you must maintain that. When that gets reflected, definitely there is a mechanism of, directing this money to the department for further conservation and restoration. So I think I will stop here. But, many more things have to be worked out. Rather, within the state, they have to negotiate with their government to fetch this money, because it is, I won't say you should get entire money, because it is a state asset. Others should actually also be banking upon this particular asset, but a great amount should come for conservation and restoration. Otherwise, next year the money will get reduced for the state itself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Ma'am, if I could have a follow-up question regarding this, how do you think states can build their capacity in ensuring that they do get these resources? What is the state's role or the forest department's role in bringing this money from the state to them?
So first of all, they themselves should understand. I'm talking in front of the forester sitting here, Mr. Srivastava, Mr. Subhash, Chandra, and we have worked together to build this cause. See, it is the era of demonstrating, numbering, monetizing, measuring, and then trying to amplifying your cause. I was part of an international study, the economics of ecosystems and biodiversity, where we were actually able to measure these contributions. And the tagline of the entire study, or the moral of the story, was measuring what you manage. So we demonstrate to the state government, this is what is our contribution, unless until we do that. So I had a chance to work with a couple of state governments to build this capacity on their behalf. And we would like to kind of create a decision support system, which built a dashboard where when you have a working plan, we even had recommended that, and the working plan code now has got a chapter on forest resource accounting, but not much of an exercise is being done. If that is being done, government is able to, we can able to convince the government that this is a true contribution. If you don't, maintain this resource will deplete, and your contribution or your allocation will get reduced next year. So, or in the next Finance Commission. So we have to build capacities in the states, but you can just handhold. You can't be forever present. So if the capacity is being built for them to keep on entering this value, keep on recognizing these values, and communicating to the government and state government about their contributions, definitely they will be able to fetch much more allocation for their further conservation. But the enhancement also, like increasing the forest cover. They may be having large area under forest and tree cover, but maybe the density will be low or medium quality. And we have a biodiversity's proxy indicator is density of forest. So if you increase density cover or density of the forest, definitely the multiple benefits flow through that, and the whole economy prospers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'll now go on to Varghese for a slightly different view on this, to get, while the government will always be a very large contributor to, the restoration, conservation of our forest resources, looking at the private sector is now also becoming increasingly more important. And there is a lot of conversation going on about nature positive action and TNFD and other different frameworks. And also, in addition to that, a lot of directives that come from the EU, about deforestation free value chains and things like that. How do you think we can ensure that those resources are flowing into the right place and they're not just end up being sort of a greenwashing, and we can ensure that we actually improve our forest cover in India? Oh, I'm unable to hear you, Varghese. I'm not sure about. Oh, you're muted, sorry.
Mic is muted, Varghese.
Yeah, you're muted, Varghese.
Okay.
Yeah.
Aakriti, can you please repeat that question before I go?
Sorry, I was saying, Varghese, that there is a lot of conversation about nature positive value chains and TNFD and things like deforestation-free value chains. How do do you have any thoughts on how we can ensure that that fund flow from that side of things, whether it's through compliance or through stakeholder means, are going in a positive way and it's not just greenwashing, something like TNFD?
Okay. Thank you, Aakriti, for the question and for inviting me for this webinar. I think private sector finance is important for restoration. We have realized over a period of time that public finance is not just enough for either restoration, forest conservation, or for even watershed management. But what triggers private investment? They need to have a business interest in that, or they need to comply with an existing regulation, or they need to show to the regulators or the stakeholders that they really care about nature and they're bringing a nature positive development. Some of the reporting mechanism like TNFD enables you to do that. You need to report about how you impact nature, how you are making the nature positive, and some of them are also concerned about how they impact not just the nature, but how they impact the climate. So a lot of now the corporates, as part of their CSR, as part of their other compliance mechanism, and also other mechanism, are investing in nature, whether it is climate mitigation, whether it is providing livelihoods to communities or protecting those resources which they depend on. For instance, a beverage company depending upon water, which normally comes free of cost for their bottling units. When that water quality gets impacted, they're forced to protect nature, improve the watershed, which cannot be done without community involvement. So they start investing not only in water restoration or watershed management, they also then work with communities to entice their interest in protecting nature through either participatory mechanism or providing them with livelihoods. The other important thing that has come up is the mandated corporate social responsibility. And as a lot of these corporates, especially in localities where their factories as businesses are located, they're involved in restoration. The idea is that the communities and the people who are around their watershed or business ecosystem, their livelihoods has improved, and they get better services like water sanitation and hygiene and everything. Which again, once these communities' interests are protected, they also invest back in nature, and the community, company, and government, the trio, can then work better towards protecting nature, biodiversity, forest, and watershed.
Thank you, Verghese. I'll come back to you, but I'd like to move to RK, sir. Sir, we did this study a few years ago, and something that Verghese was also saying. When it comes to private sector financing, there isn't a lot of trust that is there in projects. A lot of companies said they don't want to invest in nature because they don't know how to assess the impact of that. What role do you think technology can play in ensuring the credibility of projects and in ensuring that we are able to measure not just possibly the mitigation benefits, which are easier, but we're also able to see adaptation and resilience in all of our nature projects?
Yeah, thank you, Aakriti. When am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So thank you, Aakriti. When we talk with private companies or private investors who wish to invest in nature, they talk in terms which is completely different from our world to their world. So in their world, what is not measurable doesn't matter, and and in their boardrooms, what is measurable is always measurable in terms of money only. So as of late, we have been trying to understand that measurable should be money and also the impact. And there are ways and means to measure the impact. Now the question is how much to measure and how much should be given. So when we wish to measure impact, we can be it the present day technologies allow us to measure at a scale which is very uh, high and very accurate. But the question is how much has to be measured so that the impact can be shown or it suffices the requirements of these private sector investors. So it's always between their imagination and the ability of the technology to measure an amount of money which they are going to invest in that impact. So if the money coming into the impact is too less, then the majority portion of that money goes to the impact measurement itself, which defeats the purpose of the investment itself. So it all depends. Okay, and this conversation has to start now. The conversation has not yet started. Okay, what to measure and how much to measure. Technology is see, there are only two things. Till now we were trying to measure additionality and the impact. Now, beyond additionality and impact, we should also try to measure the intent of the community, which is not always measurable in monetary terms or in the number terms. The intent of the community, the impact of on the community, the traceability, the transparency, technologies like blockchain, etc., has to be integrated, and traceability has to be maintained. With this, the trust factor, the technology trust factor takes over and the situation improves. Then the corporates would understand what is the amount of money they are going to invest in, and then how much they need to measure and why they need to measure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Just a follow-up question, sir. So you said measuring community intent and impact has become very important. Do you have any thoughts on how that can be done? Because, when we talk of measurements, measuring how many trees is always very easy. But how do we now start looking at community intent and impact?
See, this is a question, this is a dilemma for practicing foresters like us and even evaluators like Madam, who try and see the economic value of the tree. We have been missing the conservational value in our traditional systems, what we have carried through thousands of years. We are a civilizational country, and within our civilizational systems, within our cultural traditions, we had this nuances of uh, conservation, additionality, and built in into our system. But no value is attached to this, and neither a value can be attached to this. So we need to find out a way to measure all this without attaching a number, without a number terms. Maybe this would be accelerating our impact. A tribal society which is deeply entrenched in tree planting or a value chain of mahua, would be more able to do a conservation or ARR project there than a completely urbanized kind of society near Delhi or somewhere else. So we have to include this as an X factor in any measurement systems what we build. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Since Aakriti sir mentioned Madhu ma'am, I'd like to go back to Madhu ma'am and ask that ma'am, how do you make these measurements a part of everyday planning of the government's planning system, where something like idea of the GEP and the natural capital accounting is brought into the decision making rather than just being theoretical studies?
Yeah, a very practical problem rather than a question as well, a very interesting question. As I guess I was rightly pointing out, we do say measuring what we manage, but we do not always mean it is monetary measure or a physical. We can also quantify the physical flows, the contribution of nature. Unless something is traded, we cannot put the right value. So we impute the value. If there was a market, what would have been its contribution? But it's not always the case. The idea to work out the value is the value of the natural asset, the natural capital. To understand what we possess, and if we erode this capital, what we lose. And if we conserve, what we get. It reminds me, I always quote this in very interesting song of a movie called as Kismat, where the people on the streets are singing, "Garibo ki suno, wo tumhari sunega, tum ek paisa doge, wo 10 lakh dega." because they have got lots of blessings, and blessings definitely matters, and they lead to this kind of prosperity. So nature is very benevolent, as I mentioned in my previous comment as well. It provides so much to you. So, but to make it realized in the planning process, it is very important to measure. So one of course measure is what is called as the cardinal measurement, where we actually assign a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, these many hundreds or thousands or millions or billions rupees of contribution. And where, especially for the rural populations, the dependence is very high. The stake is very high. We have all sort of stakeholders who have dependence interest on nature, but the secondary, tertiary are more in terms of management, more in terms of long-term kind of interest, but immediate interest comes from the local populations. So we do ordinal valuation. We try to work out what if resource goes away, what if conservation happens. They can give us the ranking of dependence, the dependencies. They can give us how the life totally changes. So we try to work out, do the sort of ordinal valuation by ordering the preferences, ordering the dependence on the resources. And if we don't have, neither we have cardinal or ordinal valuation techniques available or time to also do that, we borrow value from other studies called as the benefits transfer. But it does matter. We can also record information. We have got participatory processes. We can do historical transect. We have ecological transect to understand what existed, what did not exist. Like for example, in eastern UP, there used to be a festival called as Sadgadda. To understand the biodiversity, we do have some sophisticated systems evolved currently to map and account biodiversity, but still not fully. So the children are sent during the festival time in the jungle to pick all the edible fruits and vegetables, the greens from the forest. And they have realized that over the years they have shrunk from hundreds to few numbers only. So this is the loss of biodiversity. This is the way they capture. They also have very interesting inbuilt system of understanding climate change. It's a technical jargon for us, and then for them, but they can see how the seasons are changing, the dates are changing. They can tell you by a particular slot in the month that it would rain. This is a time when crops can be cut, but now things have changed because of the climate change. All these kind of cycles have completely changed. So this is how we have to capture this information and put them into the system. But at the same time, it is also important to do a bit of sophisticated, mapping and capturing of this information. So we have an international system, endorsed or developed by UN Statistical Division. I happen to be part of one of these reports, where we worked out the whole mechanism of system of environmental and economic accounting. We must know what environmental costs we are paying for economic development, what environmental benefits we get by conserving nature. It's very important to convey that. So when we have this kind of two paradigms, understanding the cost of degradation versus the value of conservation, you are able to convince people to go for nature positive way, what we are talking about here. And that's how we are able, we try to convince governments in everyday planning. And of course we talk in terms of livelihoods, in terms of how it impacts the livelihoods of people. Everyday happenings would definitely influence in terms of water availability, in terms of all SDGs we talk about. This is one of the way of measuring this, if not exactly in how much, but in terms of exact number, but by how much. The SDG, for example, one, poverty and hunger, huge dependence on on forest. It reminds me of a very interesting study done by Dr. Anas Judha, who is no more, very, very eminent economist, and he worked for 21 districts of India way back in 90s, early 90s, and found that the lean season of agriculture is actually a fructification cycle or season of forest. And people, it follows Say's law. Supply creates its own demand. Now, because it's a lean time for agriculture, you have time, you have energies, you have to have, because you depend. That's why you depend so much on forest. So there's a complementarity exists between public and private kind of goods. That's what this is all about. So we have to capture this, and we create ecosystem condition account to know what is the status and condition of health of the ecosystem. The Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, which also I had a chance to work with, was a report card of health of ecosystems. Then we came for the economics of ecosystems and biodiversity to understand the condition of that, in what condition and what extent it is. What is the span of an ecosystem, what the condition it is. You may be having large forest area, but may not be having tree cover on it. So it is a condition it talks about. Then we talk about ecosystem, services, what you get from that. And and how much you're able to use. Like water is an ecosystem service coming from forest, but not the entire water is being used. So this is how we organize our information day to day, definitely, and then it provides a lot of support to the government to take decisions regarding policies, regarding uses, regarding restrictions, regarding incentivization, and like that. I'll just stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ma'am. It's very interesting, the story you were telling from UP, because just last week, one of our colleagues was talking about a festival in Assam as well, in which they have to cook one meal with 100 different leafy vegetables. And she was also saying that it's becoming more and more difficult to be able to find those 100 leaves. So yes, this is definitely a problem that all cultures possibly across India are facing with the loss of biodiversity. And it also reminds us how important it is to conserve that, both from economic value, but also from a cultural perspective, how important it is for us to conserve biodiversity. I'm going to go back to Subhash Chandra sir, and ma'am mentioned that it's very important that how do we ensure that development and conservation are going hand in hand. And so, having been in the government and having looked at CAMPA and compensatory afforestation, how is that something that you were able to ensure that all the one is that all the different departments are talking to each other? There is supposed to be diversion for mining or for road construction. How are they also understanding the value of forest, the importance of forest, and how are all the different departments talking to each other of conservation?
This is a debate coming from last 3-4 decades that there is a conflict between development and conservation, nature conservation. But I don't think there is any conflict. It is basically development and environment and nature goes hand in hand. Because if nature is not supportive, we cannot develop. And whatever development is, that is not sustainable. So in fact, we have to respect nature and we have to respect environment while making our development journey. And what is happening in India, because there has been a long lag of development, so a lot of investment is there in the infrastructure, which is required for everyone. So while devising an infrastructure project, we have to see how we can minimize the impact on the forest or uh, its environmental impact also. So at the same time, now there is so much emphasis because this compensatory afforestation is done to minimize that the loss due to diversion of forest and biodiversity. But at the same time, we have to see that there is a convergence of thought how we are going to build infrastructure which is causing minimum damage to the existing forest. At the same time, we have to see that different segments, different sectors see forest differently. So, as a forester, our role is to educate people about the conservation, how it helps everybody, because like climate change, it is impacting everyone. So, how if the forest in good health, there can be a very good potential to minimize the impact of climate change. So, another important aspects of biodiversity and water, soil health also, because forests are contributing significantly in reviving the soil and soil health and maintaining the productivity of the land. So we have to emphasize that this natural wealth, which is truly a national wealth. It cannot be subordinated to economics, which is not taking into natural wealth accounting. So, at the same time, we have to see that we are able to generate green jobs, especially in the management and management of natural uh, sector, especially in forest, because forest can contribute significantly in the green jobs creation. We have not been able to engage significantly, and what the finance government sees that they are providing you salary of the staff of the department for protection, as well as some minimal required plantations which are required, because government doesn't see value in investment there, because they think that plantation uh, may not be immediately help the local population, but we can see that it is a very it has very good potential for engaging the local communities through employment, green employment, and this can really enhance their income. And once the natural restoration of degraded lands are there, the degraded forest is there, the people can have so many products directly or indirectly from the forest, which are contributing to their livelihoods and income. So I think there is there has to be a lot of consultation, discussion among the people who are taking up any developmental work in the forest, so that we are able to improve forest as well as the development in the area. Likewise, the cities, we have to make our cities green, and there is a lot of scope of employment in the management of green spaces, development and development of city forest and conservation of biodiversity. So these all will lead to a lot of investment through private sector, where urban greening is one area where the private sector can play a good role. Apart from that, our infrastructure like mining is just site specific, because the mineral wealth is generally, we have seen in the central Indian plateau, it is localized there. So we have to depend on the natural forest, this forested land for mining purpose, but we have to see how we are able to restore the land after mining, and this is doable. This cannot be said that these area cannot be restored with the proper planning and scientific means. So I stop here. I think we can have further discussion on this.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. I think I'll go back to RK, sir. Because Subhash Chandra sir talked about communities and green jobs and green livelihoods. Something that comes up a lot now regarding communities is, of course, carbon finance, sir. And a lot of people are looking at it as, this sort of a silver bullet that might solve all our problems when it comes to climate change and conservation. And what are your thoughts on how, one, how we can ensure fairness when we are doing carbon projects, and also have its best value for both communities and for nature when implementing something like carbon? And do you think it's going to be the solution that people think it is?
So at the outset, I would like to suggest that it's not a silver bullet solution for anything, whatever communities are being tried to, or the developmental agencies are trying to project it to be. Definitely, it's a small incentive, many a times overhyped, and it should come along with the mainstay product of the landscape there for the community. The carbon income should come only as or usually comes only as an additionality, many times too less to be independently viable, but good enough for the community to keep their interest on. So we should refrain from overhyping this as a solution. It's not a solution, but additionality. It's there to prove the additionality, and it is a incentive mechanism to keep the interest of the community alive. See, whatever as a developmental curators, whatever we need to go and talk a conversation in a village or to a community or to farmers, economics come first. We may talk of so many good things or bad things, or we may propose so many things, but economics always comes first. So, leveraging carbon finance is a good point to start with. And then when the benefits of other measures what are taken along with the carbon finance, when they start flowing, then the direction is irreversible and the farmer doesn't want to go back. So it's not a full-fledged solution, but it's definitely a catalyst and an additionality over the other benefits what will follow from these kind of projects. Thank you.
So just a follow-up question. So when it comes to the benefit sharing of carbon projects, there is a lot of variation, that we have seen ourselves. Is there any means in which we can make sure that communities do get that
yes.
benefit?
No, see, the first and foremost, as we have discussed with the various governments, and as a policy in our company, we follow that we try and give maximum share of the carbon to the farmer. We have been giving 80%, we have been giving 70%, depending upon how much is workable and how much governments or the public institutions are ready to support us. In case of ALM or ARR carbon, where governments are also involved, and there is lot of public data infrastructure which is uh, already available there for us to reduce the cost of the project, we are definitely going to share more with the community, and that is why it becomes more so incumbent upon the governments to have a policy to make the data infrastructure and the field presence available with them uh, to companies like IORA or any other company trying to build up a project uh, to reduce their costs. And more the costs are reduced, more the verification costs are reduced, more the hosting costs are reduced, more the onboarding costs are reduced, more and more money is going to flow to the farmer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. I'll go back to Varghese now and ask a slightly different question, Varghese. Thinking to your previous life when you were, funding large-scale forestry projects for a very long time, very, very large-scale projects. What, was sort of your evaluation criteria in terms of what did you want to see in the project? What sort of impact were you seeing? How were you evaluating that? And I also have a follow-up question after that, but maybe this to begin with.
See, us as a funding agency, one of the foremost requirement was a transformative change. Transformative change into the environment, whether it is improving the forest condition, protecting the biodiversity, and transformative change into the lives of the people, improving their lives through improving livelihoods. The other aspect which we looked at, whether the government money, I was working with USAID, which was a government fund, and similarly the case with Government of India, the public funding is limited. We were looking at if our limited investment can catalyze private investment. For instance, we did some demonstration of some income generation activities in a couple of landscapes. Then the ICICI Bank quite liked it. They come and invested and started scaling that. That is about moringa farming and converting that moringa into leaves and selling those. So the corporate really liked it. Then they took it forward. Then the other aspects, whether we looked at as a funding agency, is there a risk? Is there a risk that preventing public or the other private agencies from investing in nature-based solutions, whether it is climate mitigation, adaptation, livelihood improvement, any other things? So then we looked at how can we de-risk? How can we de-risk investment from private sector, especially from banks? For instance, we designed a loan guarantee to promote funding in the agroforestry sector. So we were told that the risk in the agroforestry is too high. So none of the banks, commercial banks, are willing to invest in agroforestry, while they were willing to invest in agriculture. So we, working with a couple of NBFCs, we designed a loan guarantee, a 50% loan guarantee, where if the farmers default, the purpose was promoting agroforestry either as a bund plantation or as a block plantation of both forest trees as well as horticulture plants. If the farmer or the farmer producer organization promotes, then USAID through the US Treasury would bear 50% of that loss. So, and it quite went well. I think I said this before also in one of the other workshops. We were told that there is a risk, but in 4 or 5 years or 6 years the project ran, there was not even a single default of payment. What that entailed was there was no risk. It was a perceived risk, and also we were told that if we demonstrate agroforestry and becomes a viable model, the agroforestry lending, many of the other banks would come and started lending to agroforestry. That never happened. So the other thing, now looking at the other thing, we looked at whether our interventions can signal changes that can impact policy, or that can provide policy inputs, or there is a tool that can be scaled up. For instance, we work with Government of India in developing forest working plans using GIS application, which we call the One System. That then we were able to scale up that. We started in 3 states, but we were able to scale up that nationally. The other important fact was that the learnings from the preparation of that working plan went into the revision of the latest working plan code. Then we also helped Government of India with coming up with agroforestry policies in 7 states. So in summary, we look if there is a transformative change, if we can catalyze public-private investment, and if we can de-risk investment by private agencies, and whether we can bring in policy change. Directly may not be, but provide signals to the policymakers through work on the ground. I stop here. And
thank you very much, Varghese. Just a follow-up question. You mentioned that it was a perceived risk of agroforestry not being safe. But I mean, considering that in order for India to meet its forestry NDC goal and our target of 33% green cover, agroforestry is the means to go about it. What was the perceived risk when it came to agroforestry?
see, the perceived risk was from 2 or 3 counts, because most of these bank people, they were not trained on agroforestry, and the benefit, they think that the benefits accrue over long term. That is one thing. And the third thing was they never had a price instrument or schedule of cost. For agriculture, they had a schedule of cost, but for them to lend in for agroforestry, they never had a schedule of cost available with them. That is one of the reasons that these banks were not willing to lend to the farmers. When USAID's last project, the Toffee on agroforestry, that came to an end, rather came to an abrupt end, we were working with some of the banks and with some of the policymakers to come up with schedule of cost. So there are many things. One is in the mind, then they lack capacity, then they lack tools to lend to farmers on agroforestry. So the 3 things combined, not just a perceived risk, but there are some actual challenges also.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. We are nearly reaching our 1 hour mark, so I'm going to have one final question that I'm going to open to everybody, and possibly maybe we start with Varghese, and then we can see if anybody else wants to answer. That if we really want to maximize the benefit we have from our forests, both from an environmental and from an economic perspective, what is the one change that you think is key? It can either be a policy change or a market-related change. Varghese, according to you, what is that one change that is needed? And then I'll have the same question for the other panelists as well.
So I would think that from a corporate perspective, in terms of reporting, in the sustainability reporting, whether it is TNFD, ESG, or anything, what it assures is that it forces the businesses to do nature positive development, because when they need to report, the stakeholders or shareholders would look into that, and they would if you have a nature positive outlook, then your share value would improve. And also there's a pressure from the shareholders to improve the way the companies work. That can make a transformative change in how companies interact with nature, how they source from nature, how they can contribute to watershed development, forest protection, or even in protecting the livelihoods of the communities, because their business is at stake. Thank you. Okay. That's what I think.
Yeah. Thank you, Varghese. Madhu ma'am?
Well, I would say it's very important to highlight the value of contribution. I mean, this year's theme itself is forests and economies. And if you look back to the themes of previous International Year of Forest, it would have been forest and wealth, forest and health, forest and food, forest and climate change. I think forest is embedded everywhere. We must respect, we have such a wonderful mechanism in India, like you talked about examples of Assam. I quoted an example of, UP. To respect, to conserve, we worship forests, we worship trees, we worship rivers, we worship, landscapes, we worship, lands, wetlands, many more such things. So unless we value, because we have seen what happened. We not just have been using these resources, we have been misusing, we have been overusing, we have been abusing these resources. So high time we must start giving due respect, compassion to it, and it comes through understanding if these are gone, we are also gone. So that's very important to highlight the value of contribution of and the relationship of with economies, and then people will understand better and contribute towards their conservation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Subhash, sir?
Yeah, I was just wondering whether energy security of the country is at risk because of the West Asia conflict. And I think tree outside forests and agroforestry, they have great potential to transition to biomass-based energy. And it is very much possible. There has to be a lot of financing in this sector so that we can utilize the tropical sun of our country so that we get the maximum advantage to that. And we should not be overtly over dependent on others for our energy needs. So this is the area where the tree plantation or this comes into picture, and we have to see that it is done for optimal use and adds to our energy security. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Aakriti, sir?
Thank you, Aakriti. From my side, the only request would be to remove the word forest from agroforestry. It should be trees in the farmland, and trees in the farmland governed with a new set of guidelines or a policy from agriculture department. The moment that happens, India has enough space, enough farmlands to grow enough trees to secure by security of energy security of the country. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all of our panelists for this really interesting and enlightening session. I'll hold on to something that Madhu ma'am said, that if our forests are gone, if they are gone, we are gone. So I think it's very important for all of us to remember this on a day before International Day of Forests. And with that, I'll hand over to Bhavita to give us a summary and to close the session.
As we bring this session to close, so I want to extend heartfelt thank you to each one of you, to most importantly our distinguished speakers, and to everyone who is there and listened to us very patiently. So today our discussion was not merely about forests, but about the very foundation of our survival. So we got to know about deep interdependence between forest and communities, practical approaches to measure physical flows, community priorities. So to build a truly nature positive economy, we must move beyond ideas and commit to high integrity financial model projects, robust monitoring system, and greater transparency. So the journey towards a sustainable planet is long, but if we come together, the roadmap towards a transformative change is very clear. So thank you for each one of us towards saving our time and saving the forest. And let's turn these insights into more realistic actions and have an inspiring rest of our day. Thank you, all of you, for sharing personal experiences and sharing the insightful learning with us.